Good morning, everybody. It's Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and on this episode I'm going to give you some updates on some things that I have purchased, which are primarily related to my grandmother's quilt that I'm going to try to reproduce. Speaking of which, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how far I've gotten with that project and some experiments that I've been doing in preparation for creating that particular quilt. And yeah, and I'm going to talk about a couple of other projects that I have worked on and what I'm going to be working on. So let's get started with this. Starry Night in the background here. This you have seen in bits and pieces on my vlog and on Stephen and Walter Live and here. It is now absolutely finished, and I think it turned out really well. I'm going to admit that it was very time consuming. I don't think I would necessarily do another one. Well, I might. You know, I have a short memory, so I might go ahead and do another one. It wasn't that it was difficult. It was the time that was involved. There's 32 different tiles in this wall hanging. Each tile takes about an hour and a half to do. It goes through a lot of thread, so you got to be prepared for that. So this is not an inexpensive project. But then again, the final product is worth it. I added the border to it using the same fabric I used in the background of the piece itself, and on the back I used that same fabric as well. Now it's not quilted. Well, it is sort of quilted because on the back, and I will do a little up close and personal view of this, and I'll insert that video right after I'm finished talking about this in here, because there are a couple of mistakes, and I know you should never point out your mistakes, but I am going to point them out because, well, that's what this is all about. I was an idiot, but I don't think anybody is going to see those mistakes. I had someone tell me once at a quilt show, when you never point out your mistakes, and besides, a man on a galloping horse going 3 miles an hour past what you have created will never notice the mistake. So as long as you're on a horse, you'll never notice these. But they're very minor mistakes. They don't stand out, and it doesn't take away from the overall appearance. So I think this turned out really nice. And I've been working on it for a long time, as I have said. Now, there's a couple of other projects that I want to show you as well. And I'm just going to get my microphone here. I'm using my new ring light on here, so if you do see a bit of a reflection of my glasses, I'm trying to set it up so you don't. Forgive me for that. New technology, I'm playing. So let's move this off to the side and let's bring this out and talk about it. And it is another table runner. And this was actually on a whim. I don't need another Christmas table runner. Like I need a kick in the head. This particular one was a kit. It came from not the quilt store I usually go to, one I go to infrequently, which is north of us. It's called the Quilter's Cupboard. They tend to have a different sort of selection of fabrics than from my usual quilting store, Ultimate Sewing. They tend to focus more on vintage style or like fabric, which is okay. I like that for a change. But when I was in that store, and basically I was in there because I was bored, I needed to get out and let you know, it is the time of COVID, doing everything safe. So were the people in the store and the shop. So, okay, I wasn't taking any risks here. So this was a kit. I saw it, and you know how they put kits together, right? They put all the fabric in such a way, the way they bundle it, showcases the fabric that comes in the kit and looks really nice when it's on display. And that's how I got sucked into buying this one. I saw it. It has my favorite colors, blues, in it, of course, and I couldn't resist it. So I bought it. I think it was $39.99 Canadian for it, which is an average price for something like this when it includes the fabrics. And I put it together in basically one day. It went together fairly fast, although there's a lot of little pieces in it, as you can see. Now, when I first got it done, and I hadn't put the binding in the backing and did any quilting on it, I showed it to Walter, and he went, yeah, that's okay, which means he didn't really like it. And I have to admit, I didn't really like it that much either. When I first got the top together, I mean, it was okay, but it didn't grab me the way it did when it was all packaged up. But nevertheless, I persevered and I finished it, and I added the border, or not the border, the binding. Now, and the backing. It's the backing. Now, normally on a table runner, I won't put binding. I'll usually do and I'm going to have to look this up because I'm never sure what it's called. Is it the pillowcase method? You know, basically where you're putting everything together with the inside out, and then when you stitch it, you pull it all through and stitch up the hole and it's done. That's the way I would have usually had done something like this. But I decided, no, I thought in this one, because of the points, it would look better with the binding. But something I didn't think about is when I was putting the binding is that I have to go around these, what are these, 45-degree angle? Or are they 30? Well, one or the other. I never passed geometry very well. So I thought, ooh, how do I do that? You know, where you have to fold it over the corner when you do a normal quilt binding on the 90 degrees. Well, actually, you just do it the same way. You just turn around, straighten it, it looks like it's 90 degrees, and away you fold. And yeah, it works. So, hey, there was a challenge. I conquered it. I learned something when I was doing this. So that's good. And then I just did walking foot quilting. Very simple, wavy line down it all. Now, this may be part of my Christmas decor, or it may just end up being a potential gift. I don't know which. But after I got the binding on and the backing and did the quilting, I kind of liked it. And then I showed it to Walter, who's my resident critic, my quilt police. And yeah, he said he liked it too at that point. So there you go. Sometimes projects, don't judge them until they're completely finished. Don't let it stop you. Completely finish it. You may learn to love it. So I did that. Let's move it over here. And then I did this. Now this was just fun. Okay. I got this free pattern for this in the hoop applique Santa. It came from Creative Kiwi, and I love their stuff. But I really, at first I didn't. I downloaded it because it was free, wouldn't you? If it's free, and it sat here on my desk while I was finishing up some other projects, and I thought, well, I was getting a little tired of doing table runners and banners and whatnot, and I thought, well, what the heck, let's do it. And I did, and I kind of like the way it turned out. It's a good size. You do it in 3 pieces, and then part of the instructions for the embroidery machine are to put the 3 pieces together in the hoop. So you're not doing any hand sewing on this whatsoever. And I kind of thought it was cute when it was done, and not a bad size. So I thought, well, I can't just let that sit in a corner somewhere. Let's make it into something. So I thought, well, I could use a Christmas banner up by my front doors, where in my house I live in a raised bungalow, and you go up about 4 or 5 stairs to go to our main level, and then to come downstairs you go down about 6 stairs. So there's a landing at the front door, and of course you have banisters. And I thought this might look good hanging over the banister because it'll face right out. When someone comes in the door, the first thing they're going to see is this. Not that we're going to have anybody over here at Christmas time, but you know, the thought is there. So I decided I'd make it into a very simple banner. I had these embroidery designs as well. Now, Walter had actually downloaded these, and he's using them to make a couple of Christmas tote bags, and his bags are always gorgeous. And I liked the designs, so I thought, what the heck? I'll do a couple of panels with those, sew it all together, and the end result is what you see here. Very fast, very simple, with the exception of this part. The rest of this all went together in a day, and actually I was on a virtual retreat with my sewing guild, with my quilting guild. It was on Zoom, and that was Sunday afternoon for about 3.5 hours. And so that's what I did during that time. And it is sort of quilted. I used a quilting pattern on each one of these panels, which you cannot see from back there. And even if you're up close like this, I used maybe a tiny bit too light of thread color. I went for sort of a light silver, but it really, with the background, it kind of blends into it, but that's okay. That was part of the embroidery with this pattern, with both of these. Actually, it was two separate patterns, and I amalgamated them together. So it doesn't go all the way through the layers. So basically on the back of this, you have absolutely no quilting whatsoever. But because of what I'm using it for, no one's going to be looking at the back or even see the back. So I didn't worry about that. So yeah, I'm really happy how this little project turned out. And it was fun doing it during our little virtual sewing day with my guild. I found it very relaxing. It was almost like being at the real thing, you know. So, or maybe I'm just getting used to doing Zoom stuff a lot. But anyways, I'm very happy with these two projects. I think I am sort of done with Christmas now. And very soon I am going to do a video. Don't trip over my microphone cord. I'm going to do an episode where I'm going to lay out all the Christmas projects that I've worked on this year. And the ones I did last year as well. I have to dig them out of my crawl space. And so my idea is I'm going to show you all of those things and talk a little bit about them. And then I'm going to decorate my house. And then I'll show you what they all look like in the way I decorate. And I think I'm going to do a lot more extensive decorating this year than I have in the last few years. I have all this stuff, might as well put it out, right? Plus, what else have we got to do? Bring in a little Christmas cheer during this time of COVID, right? Okay, I'm going to have a little sip of coffee. So here's a close-up of the what they call Starry Night Santa, my wall hanging. And I'm just going to move in a little closer so you can see how this sort of goes together. So you can see these lines, okay? Each one of these is a tile, and there are 32 of them in this wall hanging. And you do stitch in the ditch after you get it all together down the inside of that. Now, being an idiot quilter, I want to show you my mistakes. Actually, I didn't do too bad a job of lining these tiles together because it's like a jigsaw puzzle. But you can see if you looked at it really carefully, there's a couple of spots where my trees don't quite line up. They're close, and it was tricky trying to get them in there. You had to do a little finagling, but I was able to do it. Now, there's a lot of thread in this. And I had a little chart that I created telling me what colors to use when. And for the most part, I did okay, except there's a couple of spots. Can you spot what I'm talking about? Aha, yeah, right there. Back of the reindeer's head. Wouldn't you know? I used the wrong color. Yeah, but I didn't notice this until I got this thing together. So if you think I'm taking it apart and fixing that, think again. That's never going to happen. Also, down here in the snow drifts, slightly different white. That was white. That came out a little bit of a cream. But okay, so let's just pretend that the reindeer had an accident. Okay, right there in the snow drift. As my mother always said, never eat yellow snow. But that's not too bad given, you know, the complexity of this piece. And, you know, like I said, somebody looking at this, unless they really study it, are really not going to notice those mistakes that I've pointed out to you. So I broke a quilter's rule here, pointing out my mistakes. But I wanted to show you that it's very easy to make a mistake, and it's not the end of the world. At least it's not the end of the world for me. You know, Walter is my quilting police, and he didn't find the mistake. Mind you, I didn't let him look at it too long before I pointed it out to him. But that's what it looks like close up. And at the back of it, that's the quilting. Basically, you don't do any quilting on it. You just do stitch in the ditch, as I said at the beginning, and it's just a grid pattern on the back. And no one's going to be studying the back of your quilt. And if they are, kick them out. Okay, so a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of expense, but I think the end result was well worth it. And we will move on. Okay, let's talk then about Yeah, a project that I'm going to start later today. Actually, I've already started it yesterday when I was at that quilt store where I bought that kit for the blue table runner. I also picked this up, which was not a kit, but it was a pattern for making these buckets. I thought it was something a little different. Again, this was an impulse buy. But what I'm thinking is doing them in Christmas fabrics. I've actually cut out the pieces. And I'll show you the fabrics that I'm going to be using. These aren't the actual pieces, but the fabric. This is going to be my main fabric. So the outside of the bucket. This is the bottom of my bucket. And this will be the lining of my bucket. And it's also the handles for the bucket. So, you know, these all together. Where's that little piece? Second here. Get myself organized. Okay. So these are my fabrics for my little Christmas bucket. Now my idea in my head, whether this comes to fruition or not, is that once I have the bucket done, I'm going to go out and get some fake Christmas foliage and fill it out. And I think this will be nice sitting on a table or sitting in a corner somewhere in my house, maybe in front of my fireplace upstairs where I'm going to be putting that mantle scarf I showed you a couple of episodes ago, things like that. I don't know. This is the idea in my head, but I got to make it first. So I've cut out the pieces, got to put it together. And you can make it in 3 different sizes. And it shows you that. I'm going to make the smallest one, and the smallest one measures 8 inches in diameter. Then there's a 10-inch and a 12-inch. If it works out okay, if it's not that difficult to make, I don't know, we'll see. The instructions look a little involved for something like this, but I have a feeling that it's probably not that hard. I've done tote bags before and stuff like that, so I'm sure I can handle this. Then I might consider, out of, you know, other fabric, not Christmas fabric, making several of these and using them for maybe storing fabric bundles or something, putting my fabric bundles in my sewing room on display, whatever, decorate it up a little bit. My sewing room looks more like a dungeon, but what more can you do, right? More coffee. So that I'm going to work on a little bit later today. All right, let's talk about some other things that I bought. And then I'm going to start to talk about my grandmother's quilt that I'm trying to reproduce and some of the little problems I've had, or not really problems, but things I've learned about it. Okay, so I did buy fabric for my grandmother's quilt, and this fabric, I'm going to do it in blues, and you know why I'm going to do it in blues, because the original quilt is done in salmons and peaches and creams, and I don't like those colors, and that's one of the reasons that I'm going to reproduce the quilt. I'm going to be doing it in blues and purples, and so I bought a layer cake. I actually bought 4 layer cakes. I bought 2 of these, and I bought 2 of these. Now, I'm not going to be using the greens in it, but it also had blues and things like that. The reason I bought so many of these, which is probably overkill, is because in my quilting store that I go to, they don't usually get a whole lot of these. And when they do, they go pretty quick. And you know what happens? I'm not sure how much fabric I'm going to need. And you can bet you'll get 3/4 of the way through the project, run out of fabric, and go and try and get more of these, and there won't be any there. So I bought the lot. It won't come to waste. I mean, these suckers aren't cheap. They're about $75 Canadian a piece, but you do get 42 10-inch squares. So, you know, it's a fair amount of fabric. And as I said, whatever's left over, I'm sure, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot left over, that's going to make another quilt, probably. So at least that's the way I justify it. And do I need to rationalize or justify the fabric I buy? No, I do not. If I want it, I get it. Just like that. Yeah, really. I know a lot of people have husbands or wives they have to justify their purchases to. I do not. And I am lucky for that. If I want it, I get it. Okay? Within reason, of course. Reason meaning cost. But anyways, yeah, 4 of those, that's $300, okay? But they won't come to a waste. So I've got my fabric for all of this for the grandmother's quilt. Now, and I'll come back and talk more about that in a few minutes. But what I want to talk about now is when I was at that same place where I bought the blue table runner and I bought the bucket pattern, well, I saw these little charm packs. I think there's 42 pieces in here, and I just thought it looked very interesting. But I have not. I bought 2 of these because my philosophy is if 1 is good, 2 is better. If you can get a class set, it's from my teaching days, you're in heaven. So I bought 2 of these. I have nothing in mind specifically for these. I just like charm packs. I like fat quarters. I like strip packs. I love pre-cuts. Okay, what can I say? But I thought I'd open this up and show it to you. So I'm going to take the bow off. There we go. And I love how they put a piece of cardboard in between to make them feel thicker than they are. Of course, I think that keeps them substantial. Okay, so I'm just very quickly going to hold these up. Now, it looks like there's some oranges. Not thrilled with orange, but you know, in little quantities in a quilt or something, depending on what you're doing, they can look very nice. More orange. Boy, more orange in here than I thought, really. Okay, now we're getting into sort of this green. Looks like there's about 2 of each pattern in here. So there's that green. Again, that's not a color I would normally go to. Now here's something I would go to. The blues. This isn't a bad shade. Light purple or mauve, whatever you want to call this. Lilac, I'm not sure what it is. Okay, I can't get it off here. Just a second. That, yeah, it's got potential. I do tend to really lean towards darker colors, so something like that. Now this, don't know. That might have potential. Again, it's in the greens. I stay away from greens and browns. That I don't mind. That's a keeper. Now we're starting to get into the darker, you know, browny tones. And there's some black. Black I don't mind. In small quantities, you can use that. Gray-ish. Again, those are pieces that I would probably use. Now we're getting into like the pinks. Not a fond of pinks. Again, it really depends on what I'm creating. Now, although I'm not that fond of green, that's kind of appealing to me for some reason. That one I find interesting. This wouldn't be bad against some of the darker colors. Like, I think it would go okay with something like that. Here's another shade of purple. And this is sort of a, I don't know what you call this color. It's bluey, greeny, tealy, I don't know. So that's what's in the pack. I don't think that I would use these charms in all of them in one quilt, but I could see using them to you know, as part of another project that's maybe using other fabrics. These might be good fillers, blenders, whatever you want to call them. They won't come amiss. And you know, it wasn't a bad price. One package was $16 Canadian, 42 pieces. I guess that's sort of the going rate. I don't know. But I got 2 of them. And you know why I got 2 of them? Because I already told you that. So, yeah. So anyways, they go in my stash and they're there as a resource. Okay. What else? All right. Just about to come to my grandmother's quilt and things, but here we go. I decided to invest in a huge box of Steam 2. Now, why did I buy this much? There are 40 yards on here, or that works out to 36.5 something meters, okay? I'm in Canada, we buy things in meters. I do use Steam. It's my go-to for applique, things like that. Do I do a lot of applique? Well, more or less, I'm starting to get a little bit more into applique. So I usually run out of it. I usually buy a couple of meters of it, and I buy it at my local quilting store, and they charge about $10 a meter for it, okay? Which isn't horrible. But I saw this on Amazon, and they want it with tax, $259 Canadian. So I did the math. If I was to buy 36 meters, which this box has, at my quilt store, that would be before tax $360. Plus tax, we'll put it over $400. With tax, and I have free shipping because I have a Prime membership, this was $259. So just a little over half of what I would have paid for it. So I thought, yeah, let's invest in a box of it. I'll never run out of Steam again, okay, for a long time. I am a little concerned. Someone wrote, I mentioned this the other day on my vlog, and somebody said that theirs had sort of dried up when they had it. I don't know how long they'd had it for. They said it might have been their environment, but they didn't specify what that was. Actually, I sent them a message to see if I get a reply back to tell me more specifics about storing it, because that's something I didn't think of. I don't think I'm going to have a problem with that where I have it, because where I have it is a dry, coolish type area in here. And yeah, I think it should be okay, but we'll see. It made me a little worried though. I mean, because it's still a big investment, right? For that kind of thing. But anyways, I have it, so I should never have to run out again. For a long time anyways. Okay, so those are all the things that I bought, except I did want to show you one other thing, and I finally got it. It took a while to get it, but I got a Sew Slip 2. I'm going to have to take my microphone off for just a second and grab it. Just bear with me. Okay, I'm coming back. I probably should have stopped the video for it, but I didn't. Okay, so you may or may not know that I had a little problem. I had one of those silicone mats, so it's right here, Supreme slider that I was using to put down on the table of my sewing machine in order to make my quilt slide along when I'm doing free motion or ruler foot quilting. And yeah, I was going along quite well with that until I basically tore it. Actually, I sewed through it. It ripped it. So I tried to cut out the ripped part, made the hole bigger, and that kind of defeated the whole purpose. You can see here I've got a piece of duct tape on it. So I decided I would buy a new one. Actually, I have a little small one of that as well, which is fine, but it's a little small for my table. I'm not sure why I have a small one. I must have bought that first and thought it would be fine to try it out, and then I bought the bigger one. Well, the Supreme slider is not particularly cheap. I looked on Amazon several places, and it was about 60 bucks for the large one. And at the time, I didn't really feel like spending 60 bucks. Now, somebody had written and said that you could use contact paper, shelf lining paper, and put that down on your bed. Well, yeah, actually it does work, but the problem is the sticky back on it is sticky. And, you know, you have to pull it off, and if you need to go in and, you know, change your bobbin, which you will have to do, then you have to take it off and lay it back down again. Now, I suppose I could have cut out a little spot where the bobbin, I thought of this later, where the bobbin goes in. Mine's a top-loading bobbin. So I probably could have cut a little window out, and that would have solved that problem. But I still didn't really like it. I saw that some people were using this one that's called the Sew Slip 2. Where did I put it? Oh, no, it's the Supreme slider. Here it is here. The Sew Slip too. And so I got it. Now it looks the same as the other one, the Supreme slider, and I got the big one. And I haven't used it yet, but it's got a little bit different backing on it than the other one has on it. And I think it'll work fine. And it was a lot cheaper. Now I bought it on Amazon as well, and it was $35, I think, is what I paid for it. And remember, all my prices I'm quoting in Canadian dollars because I am Canadian. And yeah, so I have that, and I have, as I said, I just got it. It took a while to get. It was not on Prime, so I don't know if I paid ship. I think I got it for free shipping, but it wasn't Prime, so it came from a third party. It wasn't being fulfilled by Amazon, and those kind of things usually take a long time. And of course, it was coming from the States, and anytime you get anything being shipped up here right now from the States, well, it's hit and miss on how fast you're going to get something like that. So, as I'm talking here, I'm trying to roll these little suckers back up to get them back in their case, and they are rubber and plastic, and yeah. Anyways, okay. In you go. Yeah. I won't waste your time while I'm fooling around with that. So, as I was saying, anytime you order anything from the States right now with COVID, you don't know when you're going to get it. So it did take a while. I think it took a month before I got it. Okay, let's move on to the main event. Let's talk about my grandmother's quilt that I'm going to reproduce. Now, if you have not seen that video, it's the one just before this one, go to it if you're interested and check it out. I show you what that quilt looks like and why I don't like it. Well, and why I want to reproduce it and how I'm doing that. Now, you know, if you've seen that video, that I had my grandmother's template and everything for that. So what I did was I took her template and I reproduced it in electric quilt in sort of the colors I want to use. Now, these are not the exact colors. You've already seen the colors I'm going to use. I showed you the layer cakes, but this. So there's a reproduction in electric quilt of her quilt. Now, I thought electric quilt would allow me then to print out each block. Well, the blocks are all the same, basically, and give me the dimensions and that. No, electric quilt didn't do it, or I'm not using it right. It really wanted to do it more like applique than as a sewn square. But nevertheless, I have this there, and I added the borders to it, and I'm going to do it as mitered corners and the whole bit. So I've got that. It also, basically, I have 3 blocks that I have to do. The blocks all look the same. It's the placement of the colors. Again, these are not exactly the fabrics I'm using, but it's the colors, sort of the colors I'll be using. Okay, so I've got those all out. And Electric Quilt also produced how many of, and I still haven't figured out how to read this. It gives me the yardage I need, and of course I'm not really using yardage. I'm using the layer cakes and that, so it prints you that out too. If you've never used Electric Quilt before, it does do that. But Electric Quilt does have a steep learning curve to it, and I'm still playing around with it. I don't use it enough, probably. That's the problem. So anyways, then I got thinking, okay, what's the best way to make these blocks? The blocks are on a pattern called Drunkard's Path. Drunkard's Path has many different designs that you can go with. I have a ruler for making Drunkard Paths. This came from the Missouri Star Quilt Company. I've had it for a while. I used it on another project. It was a project that I wasn't doing a Drunkard's Path, but I needed to do these kind of shapes. I guess it was a variation of a Drunkard's Path. And I had to learn how to sew curves, right? So, when I first used this, I used it wrong on my grandmother's quilt because I had forgotten about this piece. I pulled this one out and figured, okay, yeah, the markings are all on here, so, you know, I need a 5-inch square, so I follow that line, cut that out, go along here, cut that out, and the piece that I cut out from here, I can just sew on the other one. No. No. And this is what I said earlier. I failed geometry, basically. I needed this piece which I found. Now I went on Missouri Star Quilt's tutorials on YouTube and refreshed my mind on how to use this, and yeah, great. So it works fine. The only thing is, and I'll show you one of the ones that I made with this. There it is. That's just a little sample one. Okay, no problem, except these are bigger. This part is bigger than what's actually in my grandmother's quilt. Now that begs the question, how did she make them? And I'm assuming that she cut out her own templates for it, and she just did a size that worked for her. Again, there's some mathematics involved in this, and when it comes to geometry, I'm not good. So I got thinking about this. Well, why don't I custom make my own templates? I do have a Cricut maker. So I played around and played around and played around the Cricut maker, and I eventually created these. These are out of chipboard, okay? They'd be better if they were out of a heavy plastic, but I have no way of cutting a heavy plastic, like a template plastic like this. Now I know you can buy thinner plastic. They make stencils out of it. They call it template plastic, but it's much thinner. And you know, I like the idea of using my rotary cutter, and you put it up against here and away you go. And that was another problem. When I was cutting this piece out, there were little, I don't know, what do you want to call it? I guess there were nicks in it from where I used it before, and so my rotary cutter was not cutting very well, and that was frustrating me, okay? And I don't like frustration, so I thought I'd make my own. So I made these. It took a while to get this so the size would work and everything, and it does work. However, it's not the best system, because you can cut into the, it's basically essentially very thick cardboard. You can cut into the edge of it and then you're screwed, okay? I thought about drawing them onto the fabric. Like this part, yeah, I could probably cut out the square. That's easy, okay? Then I can just, you know, draw with the pencil on the back of the fabric that, and use my scissors or my rotary cutter and cut that out. Yeah, okay, I can do that. And the same with this piece. Again, though, that's not the most efficient way to do it. So I did create these. I tried them out. Yeah, didn't like them. So I'm looking around on Amazon, and I put in Drunkard's Path templates, and I found some by somebody called Marty Mitchell. And it said it came with these 4 templates. It was a good price. It was like $26 Canadian. Again, I had Prime, so I got free shipping. But I figured, I thought I'd take a chance on them. They said it was various sizes, 3-inch, 4-inch, 3.5-inch. And there's a 4th one, 3-inch. Okay, I haven't read the instructions yet. I have A, B, C, D on here. One says 3 inches, another one says 3 inches, but one says A. Oh, that shows, okay, they show the outside, the inside. I wondered how these are going to work. I'll show them to you and see. I haven't used them yet. There they are. I was impressed, though, that they're thick. They're thick plastic. Okay, I was thinking they'd come on a little thin plastic, and I figured, well, that may be a disaster, because I'll never be able to keep the rotary cutter lined up with that. But they didn't, so bargain. Now, here's where things get a little different. So I told you that my grandmother's quilt, she called it Moorish motifs. And I thought, yeah, okay, it's an original design to her because she drew it all out on a graph paper that she had on cardboard and everything, colored in with pencil crayons for colorway and the whole bit. No, it is not. It is actually called A Drunkard's Path Trip Around the World. It's right there. It's in this little booklet that came with basically patterns for different types of Drunkard Path versions. And hers is called, according to this, Drunkard's Path Trip Around the World. Okay. Now, maybe at the time that she did it, this did not exist. Maybe it is a classic design. I mean, you know, there's only so many different ways you can arrange Drunkard's Path. So, you know, someone's going to come up with that. But nevertheless, that was a bit of a disappointment, but also a bit of a relief, because it meant that there are patterns out there for this that exist, and there's one right here. So that's great. Actually, I went to their website and printed out, they have a printout for this. Here it is down here at the bottom. There's another one up here, but here, the idea here is you can take this, blow it up, and you can color it in. I'm not going to do that because I've already done this. But there you go. So, thinking I was creating something unique based on my grandmother's pattern, and nothing new under the sun, right? So I have these templates. I have not yet used them. I haven't read the instructions on how to use them yet, but we'll see how they work out. Also, the other reason I bought them is because of the size. I told you that cutting them out with the other templates made these a little bit bigger, which isn't really a problem. I'll still get the same design, but I'm not trying to reproduce my grandmother's quilt exactly the way it is. But when I saw that these came in little smaller designs, I thought, yeah, that might work too, a little better. So anyways, that's as far as I've gotten on my grandmother's quilt. I'm still working on it. These are all the preliminary stages of it. Oh yeah, one more thing. So at one stage on this design, you have two of the little half circles or quarter circles being joined together. And I'm thinking, okay, when you're sewing those together, you want things to be exact. So how do you match them up? Well, you can match them up on the seam, and I did. This is my third attempt. Now, I'm not using these colors. These are just samples, right? But you can see at the top, you got to match that point up there. And these are cut on a biased, and I discovered something about pressing them. I was pressing, you see this side, I was pressing them towards the circle. Actually, they are pressed towards the circle right now. Was it the other way? Anyways, one way that you press it, you get a little fold in here, which takes about 1/8 of an inch off, and they don't line up properly. So you got to be careful with your pressing and press them in the right way. So yeah, I know now how to get them all lined up so that they will fit. It is a little tedious. This kind of sewing, because you're sewing biased fabric, you are sewing a circle, yeah, it's a little bit more time consuming, but I'm not in any rush to get this done. Okay, this is a project that's going to be extended over next year. I don't want to take the whole year to do it, but we'll see what happens, right? So I have all of these things in place now. So I guess the next thing to do is I want to cut out the pieces I need for the first row and sew an entire row together to, again, sort of as a prototype to see how it all goes together. So I'm really glad that I bought a lot of those layer cakes that I was talking about, okay? Because I'm known to make mistakes. It's just in my nature. I'm an idiot. Okay, so what else do I have to tell you right now about any of this? I think that's it for my grandmother's quilt and the projects I'm working on right now. I do want to give 2 shout outs to 2 YouTube channels that I watch on a regular basis about quilting and sewing, and that I find very, very useful. One's called The Sewing Room, and I will put in the show notes below the link to both of these ones I'm talking about. The Sewing Room is really great. It's especially good if you're a beginner. Her tutorials are very clear. So you might want to check that out. And the other one is called Quilting Life. Now, Quilting Life, she does a couple of different things on her YouTube channel. Every other week, I think it is, along with her daughter, they do a little bit of a podcast, but it's you can actually link up to it as a podcast if you do a search for the Quilting Life on iTunes. But you can also watch it on YouTube, and it's better when you watch it on YouTube because they often show the quilts that they're talking about in the podcast, so you can actually see them as well. But she also has, and her daughter does too, they have sort of a subset of videos where they're talking about their fabric lines that they have designed and quilts that they have made with the fabric lines, which is also very interesting. So those two, The Sewing Room and Quilting Life, I highly recommend. And as I said, I will put the links to those in the show notes below. Okay, so final thoughts. Well, a Christmas show. Already alluded to this. What I mean by Christmas show is, well, I've already said, I'm going to show you the things that I made this year and last year. And then I'm going to show you how I'm using them to decorate my house for Christmas. And that'll be probably a couple of weeks from now when I do that. So I just want to say thank you for coming to my videos. I seem to be getting a larger following, and that's really nice. You know, I do not do what a lot of YouTube video producers do. I do not beg you to hit the like button or to subscribe to me. So I'm not doing that. I just appreciate you coming, because if they help you out, they help you out. I've been compiling a list of future episodes I want to make, and I may go into some tutorials as well. That's coming up. I think I've got the confidence to do some beginner type tutorials anyways. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode in the Idiot Quilter series. Bye for now.